Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the June 27th, 2024 Technical Advisory Committee for the County of Sonoma. As always, we will start with introductions.
Dave Rupert, SCTA, RCPA.
Eric Montani, City of Cloverdale.
Chris Barney, SCTA, RCPA.
Mario Landeros for Sebastopol.
Rob Sprinkle, City of Santa Rosa.
John Griebenberg, City of Petaluma.
Craig Scott, City of Gottati.
Elizabeth Tyree, Sonoma County Regional Parks.
Speedy Takata, City of Road Park.
Larry Zimmer, City of Healdsburg.
Adam Garcia, SCTA, RCPA.
Drew Nichols, SCTA, RCPA.
With that public comment, I do see one name, I think, on Zoom. If anyone has any public comment.
Stuff.
All SCTA, RCPA staff are on.
Oh, okay.
Staff Red, SCTA, RCPA.
Staff Fred, and then Chris and Adam will be sharing probably from their computers.
My apologies, staff. I did not recognize the name. On to approval of meeting minutes. Anyone have any changes? Seeing none, meeting minutes passed unanimously. On to item 4.1, an informational item, Measure M invoicing and obligation status.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a reminder, for those of you that have active Measure M cooperative agreements and appropriations, there's a spreadsheet with the status of your appropriations. For those that have not that program but are not appropriated, we would encourage you to reach out to us to get those funds appropriated by the SCTA board in the coming months. With that, open any questions that anyone has.
Seeing none, on to 4.2, Go Sonoma CAC presentation schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So every year we do the Measure M presentation schedule, the CAC, and with the startup of Go Sonoma, we're sliding in presentations for those of you that have projects in fiscal year 24-25. So as you can see in the proposed schedule, we're trying to fill them in where sponsors already had existing presentations on the schedule, or we had some open months. So in September, we're proposing to add Petaluma Transit along with the other transit operators that month. For October, in addition to Petaluma's Access Across 101 study, we're adding Lynch Creek Trail. In January, we're adding 2 new presentations, one for Gottati on the sidewalk gap closures project and one for Windsor on the downtown pedestrian bicycle crossing 101 project. And then finally for Healdsburg, we're adding you in June of 2025. We'll make that correction.
Perfect.
So with that, happy to take any comments or questions, Rob.
March 31st is Cesar Chavez Day, which is recognized by the city of Santa Rosa. I was wondering if we can move that up a week.
I believe we're working on changing that date. We'll make that correction.
Observe that date too.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about 2025.
Okay,
Yeah, so my apologies on that.
great. Thank you.
We'll make that correction. And I think we might either have a special meeting in March or we'll figure out a rescheduled date for that one.
Yeah, Dave, I got a question. Sebastopol, they've got Go Sonoma funding for a pretty good project. It is programmed 25-26, you know, the Day Avenue phase 2, but we're kind of working our way through with the project right now is for all intents and purposes on the shelf, but we're looking to possibly be able to move that up and do some sort of a loan process through the Measure M funds, which means it could be happening 2025, but we're not on the schedule. So any thought to wanting to rope us in, rope us faster to schedule it?
Yeah, let's follow up with Sean and I haven't looked at your most recent quarterly reporting, but if you want to advance, we could talk about it and we could figure it out.
Yeah, and you know, it's gonna progress. It's as we go forward in it with this. I think what was your schedule? It was all the way through. What did I see? Yeah, you're getting scheduling all the way into April of 2025. So point being is that as we move forward, even though it's right now, possibly get something scheduled in so that we can, you know, kind of keep that capability with the citizens advisory.
Yeah, we can make that change.
Yeah.
How does June sound? June of 2025 sound?
I think that probably look ahead. Good, but just wanted to throw that.
Sounds good.
Want to check your calendar, make sure you're free in June of 2025?
Yeah, it's not gonna be you, Lord. All right.
Any other questions on the CAC schedule?
Yeah, Larry, David, where does the Citizens Advisory Committee meet? Do they meet here?
Yep.
Okay,
So it's the fourth Monday of the month,
in the evening?
4 p.m.
Okay. Thanks.
So usually we do 10 to 15 minute presentations from project sponsors, and then there's usually 5 to 10 minutes of questions.
And for those, do you want a formal presentation shared in advance so you can publish it with the agenda packet, or?
It's helpful, but not necessary if you don't get it done in time, but we like to have it ready in case there's questions.
Yeah, having gone through it, I've done them in advance and it seems to help. They, at least some of the members are reading it in advance and it's a pretty harmless meeting. They ask good questions. It seemed like a good group from my experiences.
Some of them ask for scope creep and they want a class 4 bike facility instead of a class 2, and but it's good, but yeah.
Anything else?
Hi,
We did introductions already, but if you just want to,
sure. I'm Ashley Cotter. I'm with the City of Sonoma Public Works.
thanks, Ashley. On to 4.3, Go Sonoma Strategic Implementation Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've got a brief presentation to share with you. Screen.
And that's not in the packet.
It's not in the packet.
Good, it's 200 pages.
One is 777.
One of its pictures. Yeah.
I know, I was just like. Yeah, I know. Comprehensive transportation plan.
This is the final Go Sonoma Strategic Implementation Plan. We took this plan to you previously in the fall of last year, and this is the final version. We did some adjustments to the plan based on changing project schedule and also programming changes, and just wanted to kind of run through. So as you know, Go Sonoma was passed in November 2020. It's an extension of the Measure M sales tax, and the draft strategic plan, as mentioned, was approved by the board back in December. Since that time, we've been working with you all on cooperative agreements and programming. As you can see in the pie chart, there's a lot of differences in Go Sonoma compared to the existing Measure M. Real quick on the competitive programs, so it's the Move Traffic, Improve Safety, and Go Bikeways and Pathways program. Those are the competitive programs versus the project specific Measure M. And then of those programs, 5% of the funding is being set aside for SCTA to assist project sponsors due after state and federal funding. We're already putting that in place with one of our new staffers, Margot Kanyas. For those of you that haven't met her yet, we've been closely coordinating with some of the jurisdictions on Safe Streets and Roads for All application, and we'll be submitting that application in August, and looking forward to other grant opportunities in the next year to help you all pursue funding for your projects. We're going to be prioritizing this funding based on needs throughout the county and demand, and looking at the benefits of the county and making sure that we're helping out where we can to try to bring in more external funding to the area. In addition to competitive programs, so there's the apportionment programs for Go Sonoma Transit. This includes 18% of the funds are for transit operations, and there's also 3% for SCTA to provide first and last mile programs and commuter programs. These funds will be utilized depending on how the transportation demand management plan that we're going to be working on this year turns out. There's also 2% of the Go Sonoma transit funds that are set aside for fare-free service for the transit operators. And that's on a reimbursement basis, so it's kind of a new thing for us. So for those of you that haven't glanced at the strategic plan, it's very similar to the Measure M strategic plan. There's different chapters for the executive summary, background, the strategic approach and programming of the existing competitive projects. There's policies and procedures, and then the financial plan and cash flow model showing how we have programmed the projects and the anticipated revenue forecast going forward. Finally, there are project information sheets that we update now based on your quarterly reporting. We just finished the second round of quarterly reporting, and so this is kind of a snapshot in time in the plan, and the ones that will be on our website are the most up-to-date data. In dependencies, we have copies of all cooperative agreements and reporting letter templates that Sean has been working with you all on, along with copies of the expense plan as approved by the voters, and also the evaluation criteria we used a couple years ago for the Go Sonoma the SCTA planning program cycle 1, and we'll be adjusting those in the future for SCTA planning program cycle 2 that we'll talk about later on in this meeting. There's a link in your agenda packet to the document, and we're happy to receive any comments you have on the draft. The big thing that I should mention is back in May, the board approved a loan between the Measure M Local Streets Projects Program and Go Sonoma to allow us to advance projects and programs for this current fiscal year, upcoming fiscal year 24-25. This was because Go Sonoma revenue collection won't start until April 1st, 2025. And so we need to have funding in place for those who have projects that are going forward right away, and also to allow us to start things like our TDM plan that I mentioned earlier and other staffing issues for Go Sonoma. The board approved those back in May, and we'll be paying them off by the end of 2026, 2027. So this includes funding for both projects and for programs, as mentioned earlier, including move track and improve safety projects and move track and improve safety capacity building, build bike lane pathway projects, build bike lane pathway capacity building, and then safety education and commuter first last mile programs. We'll be paying those off by the end of 26, 27. It's not going to impact any of the remaining Measure and LSP projects for the county or city of Santa Rosa. So there'll still be plenty of revenue available for those projects when they're ready to proceed. So we took the draft document, as mentioned earlier, to you and the Citizens Advisory Committee last summer and fall. The draft was approved by the board back in December, and then we are bringing the document to the Citizens Advisory Committee. Met on Monday, and they reviewed the document, and we're having you review it today. We're happy to take any comments or questions you have on the document today, or you can email myself or Shauna, and we'll be presenting the full document to the board on July 8th. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I don't have a question on the document, but I mentioned the call for projects, and we'll be talking about that later in the.
Yeah, so we're anticipating the call for projects for the second cycle of the SCTA funding program cycle 2 will occur in summer 2025.
2020. No, December. Okay, thank you.
Another procedural type question. So the cooperative agreements, when do you expect those to be executed?
So we're having some delay in that. We anticipate having our board approve them at their September meeting. That'll give us time to work with the city councils to get them approved on your side and then take it to our board for final approval.
If we have if an agency has expenses, let's say it's the construction contract billing for a project in like September or October, and it's ahead of the agreement, does that put it in jeopardy, or is?
I think we were able to accommodate that, but let me work with Shauna and we can get back to you on how to handle that, because I think we have a procedure in place for you to be able to incur expenditures prior to cooperative negotiation.
We received the draft of the agreement already, correct?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Shauna sent you the templates a couple months ago.
Okay, because we're taking that to our council, or has that been changed from has anything been changed on that?
I'm not sure if Shauna sent you the updated version. I think we did add some mutual indemnification language, so I'm not sure if she sent you the latest version.
Because that's, yeah, we're on track to take that in July, so.
Okay.
You know when that change was, because I don't remember necessarily getting an update.
I don't remember either.
Just get.
I think it was a few weeks ago, but I'll follow up with her when she's back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're taking ours in August. So do you have an agenda report written already?
Yeah. Want it?
That's me. Any other questions?
Another non-document question, and you tell me if we can just take it offline. Okay, April is when is that when the revenue, well, it's when revenue starts to come in, April 2025. Does that mean that we start, what is this, not LSR anymore, it's called GST?
GSR.
GSR allocations in disbursements in when?
So we anticipate probably getting our first check from California Department of Tax and Fee Administration probably in May or June of 2025. So it may take us a little while to get us the first check out to you. So I'm guessing maybe June or July is when you'll receive the first payment.
And that will start the month over, would we get it quarterly?
I think it's quarterly.
Quarterly. And that will be, for my finance people, paid that fiscal year, July. First quarter of that. Or whenever, we'll work that out, but
Yeah.
at least like, it's not April. So I'm not going to put that in my 5-year CIP. Thank you.
Another question that might not be directly related, but is semi-related. Is the competitive process, is that going to be looped in with the OBAG 4?
Okay, so it'll be very similar to how we handled the previous SCTA funding program cycle 1, where we're going to combine Go Sonoma funds with OBAG 4 and STIP funds and the other kind of miscellaneous fund sources we have to be able to try to have more funding available in the pot for everyone. So it'll be very similar to the last cycle.
Will there be a new call for projects or?
Yes.
Okay.
So Chris is going to talk in a bit about the call rides we're going to do for the countywide transportation plan this fall, but we'll have a separate call for projects for the funding program next summer. And ahead of that, we'll want to review the scoring criteria so that you will have a chance to weigh in on that and take that to the board for their final blessing, so that like last time, we'll have the scoring criteria approved before you decide to what projects to submit.
Good, thank you. Any other questions?
No, I'll wait till the end when we do our roundtable. I'll bring it up then.
Item 4.4, another informational item, the Measure M reminder letter. You have anything to add to that, David?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a reminder, Shauna sends out the letters every year on Measure M expenditures for all enforcement programs and also any project allocations. So Shauna will be sending out another reminder letter soon, and she can be in touch for those that haven't gotten the report yet.
And I'm sorry to make you do this, but part of sharing and not being able to take notes, you said the Go Sonoma call for projects is likely, the Go Sonoma OBAG 4 is summer, and then the CTP is going to be fall.
Yeah.
CTP will be fall 2024. The SCTA funding program cycle 2 will be summer 2025.
Okay, thank you. Forgive me, everyone. All right, on to item number 5, regional information updates. 5.1, inactive federal obligations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you that are on the active list, you know the deal. Please follow up with Shauna on your inactive projects and work with Caltrans to get your invoices processed. And if there's any issues with your invoices, let us know what the situation is so that we can try to keep you off the inactive list.
No comments? Item 6, SCTA BMT mitigation banking and exchange program.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's me. So I just wanted to give a brief update on our vehicle miles traveled mitigation banking and exchange program project. Let me go ahead and get this up on the screen. Try and get that full screen. There we go. It's better. So we actually have a consultant on board to support with this. We received one proposal in response to our RFP for this. And we actually received a good proposal from Fair Peers. So we procured their services to help us out with this. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what we intend to achieve as part of this project, a little bit about the schedule and milestones, talk to you about the project TAC. So we'd like to get a group of TAC members and also PAC members to help guide the project. So, and then talk about our ideas for a pilot project to test out the proposed program. So at a very high level, the project goal is to develop recommendations for some sort of BMT reduction program and looking into some sort of banking, exchange, or fee program. The development projects could pay into to offset BMT impacts. under CEQA and in response to the requirements of Senate Bill SB 742. So there's been a lot of call, at least on the planning side, to get something in place. I know a lot of you have been involved in setting thresholds and on this issue as well. So we want to get something to help mitigation easier. So we've been working with the consultant team on finalizing the scope on the project. So right now we're doing final scoping and outreach. So one piece of the project is going to be reaching out to different stakeholders like developers, a little bit of public outreach, and definitely jurisdictional staff that would be implementing some sort of program. So a lot of the outreach will be virtual. We're looking at having a project TAC help review all of the scope and materials before it goes out to our committees and also the stakeholders. And we're looking at holding at least 4 TAC meetings through the life of the project. So one of the first things the consultant team will be doing is looking at any VMT mitigation programs that are currently implemented or proposed. There's not a lot in place right now, so it may be relatively quick to actually summarize what's being done. But there are quite a few ideas on what could be done. And we also have our legal counsel. They'll be participating in the project TAC as well to kind of keep us on track as far as legal issues are concerned. And Fair and Peers, the project team, also has some legal counsel on retainer to check in with on potential legal issues as we go forward. So one piece of this will be coming up with a list of VMT reduction projects and programs and effectiveness calculations. So there's a little bit of information about that out there now, but
so when the projects are projects that the money would go to, okay.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. So for example, if there were a large housing development that was found to have VMT impacts, once we get something set up, the idea would be there'd be a approved list of VMT reducing projects that could potentially be funded through this program. So there are a few mechanisms where that could happen. There could be a bank where fees are paid in and that could be used to fund these projects. Or an exchange program basically lines the project sponsor up with a project, which they implement partially or fully. So the idea would be to have some VMT reducing projects and programs that could be scaled, so they could, like a TDM program or something like that. They could pay a certain amount of money to offset their VMT, and it could be variable based on the amount of impact. So a lot of work to do there. So we're looking forward to what the consultant will come up with. And I think the project TAC will be very important, providing feedback on that process. So once we've gone through that and have a draft program structure, recommendation in place, including who would administer this, right? So it could be SCTA, it could be someone else. Most likely place for this to land would be SCTA probably, but there could be other options out there as well. We need to work out how this would be administered. So once all of those recommendations are in place, we'd like to have some sort of pilot program that would go through either conceptual projects, past projects, or current projects to test it out, right? Like, how could this work and what are the pitfalls that we come across as we implement that? So right now we're looking at trying to get 2 different pilots going. So I'll have a little more information on this as we go along, but this is definitely something we'll talk with in greater detail at that project TAC and try and get some volunteers to, propose some projects we can look at and test through the program. So once we've done that, we could take what we learned from the pilot program and apply that to the final recommendations and, take that to the board and, see how they feel about it. And once we've done that, we can look at potentially implementing something here in the county, or the recommendation may be at the region or state level. So we'll see kind of where we land on that. So here's a look at the rough timeline. So right now, we're working with the consultant on continued scoping. We look to have a deliverable out in August that will summarize the issues that we really need to work through as part of this project. So we can definitely bring that back to this group, the TAC, and we'll have that reviewed by the project TAC in September. So those blue dots on the top line schedule, those are the proposed TAC meeting months. So, we'll be meeting with them to discuss various issues as we move along. You can see a number of stakeholder outreach meetings on that second line. We intend to do that this winter and early next year. Conduct a pilot program next year, and then come up with the final program recommendations at the end of 2025 and take something to our board November, December of next year. So here's a rough look at what we would like to talk about with the TAC at these different TAC meetings. So the first one will be an introduction, talk about the goals and key issues that will feed into that final report. And then coming up with a list of potential VMT reducing projects. The second meeting would be to look at the outreach plan, talk about stakeholders, refine that list of potential VMT reducing projects, and then come up with some evaluation criteria. Third meeting would be to summarize the outreach feedback from stakeholders, developers, local staff, things like that. Talk about effectiveness of different VMT reductions, and then talk about different program options and how to implement, right? Who the administrator would be, how it would work to actually work with the program. And then the final meeting would be to look at the final recommendations before it goes out to our committees and the board. So talking a little bit more about the technical advisory committee. So I mentioned we'd have our legal counsel on that to provide some support on the legal side of things. We'd like interested parties from the TAC and PAC to participate, both from the planning, the public works and engineering side. We'll also invite local transit agencies to participate as well, since some of these VMT reducing measures could be coming from the transit side, right? Headway improvements, things like that. So we're looking at keeping it relatively small, maximum of 15 members on that, in addition to the consultant staff. If we go much higher than that, it might get a little unwieldy. So that's what we're looking at right now. I've also already heard from Cotati staff and Santa Rosa staff that they're interested in participating. So welcome participation from other jurisdictions as well. And then the responsibilities would be attending those 4 meetings, weighing in on program needs, structure, how it would be administered, providing feedback on that pilot and the pilot results, sharing what they're already doing. So we're already pretty aware of what's going on in each of your jurisdictions as far as VMT goes. So a lot of the staff that have been helping you locally from peers are actually on the team. So they're very aware of what's going on. So glad to have that expertise on the team. And then weigh in on the deliverables that the consultants producing. So providing feedback and comments on that.
Before you jump off of that, so you're saying up to 15, but with SCTA staff and the legal and your consultants, is that included in the 15 already?
I would say SCTA and legal would count that 15, consultant would be above it.
Okay,
So,
just trying to get a feel for if 2 from the TAC is adequate for you, or if you're really looking for more.
so I would say maximum of 15 is fine. I think it would be good to have a mix of representation from small and large jurisdictions. So with Santa Rosa and Cotati, the Cotati rep is on the planning side. Torino was interested from Santa Rosa. So, we have large and small representation, but it'd be great to have some geographic variety as well.
But you're also going to be asking the PAC committee members. So, if you have Santa Rosa and Cotati there, maybe you're getting Healdsburg PAC and Petaluma PAC person or something like that, and then you're probably good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So next month I can come back and let you know where we're at and if we still need some more representation. But yeah, I think if we land on, 8 people in addition to the consultant, that's probably good. We can bring information back to the full TAC as well, but it would be good to have some, at least 4 or 5 staff in addition to SCTA and legal counsel to help review things. But if everyone wants to participate, I think we can accommodate that with that 15 member limit, maybe just limit it to 1 staff in each jurisdiction.
I think it would be jurisdictions that have development. Because now it's, well, what am I gonna ask my developer to pay to whoever, someone? So I have to check who's coming from our part.
Okay,
Planning is coming, because that we're good.
that sounds, yeah, I haven't heard the plan yet.
See, that's what we're.
So, yeah, and I know Cotati and Santa Rosa have both had questions from developers and project sponsors already, right? So it's something is needed in those jurisdictions. So the pilot program, just to touch on that a little bit, we're still developing how this would roll out. But we're thinking this would start next spring through next September. We're still trying to work out if this can be an actual project or if it has to be a concept or something that's happened in the past. So we're checking in with legal on that to see what is allowable there. And what we want to do is basically, once we have a recommended type of program in place, basically just test it out, right? Go through all the steps and see, what's missing and what potential pitfalls are on the way. So that's the idea right now. Once we get that fleshed out a little bit more, I'll bring it back to the TAC. So there is a little bit of time. So as I said, we're looking at kicking that off next spring. But if you're interested in that already, let me know. We can start talking about potential projects and engage on the legal side too, to see if that would be allowable to look at. So once the idea here is to, figure out issues with a potential program so we can make adjustments for the final recommendations. And just to give a little bit of background on this type of work that's been conducted in the region, Contra Costa County did something similar a few years ago, and they kind of stalled out at this phase. They weren't able to get through the pilot program and take those lessons learned back into their final recommendation. And so they've had to regroup and kind of figure out where they're going next. So I'm hopeful we can move the ball a little bit further than they did, but yeah, this is all pretty new, right? There aren't any mature existing programs out there we can just borrow and implement. We're gonna have to tread some new ground here as part of this project.
Chris, is there any knowledge as to what the cause of that stall out was in the country?
I talked to the project sponsor a bit, and I think a lot of it is just, this is very new, right? And they came up with a list of potential VMT reducing projects. At the staff level, there was buy-up there, but at the board level, they didn't agree with what projects were on that list. So, I think with that in mind, it will be important to us once we have that list to go to our board and make sure we're heading in the right direction at the policymaker level. So this will definitely be implemented at the staff level, but we need policymakers to also be on board. So that's where we're at right now. We're just kicking off. So just wanted to give an overview and kind of get the idea in your mind of participation in that VMT, in the project TAC. We definitely want some participation there. Those all will be virtual meetings. We're trying to make that easy to participate in and log into. So yeah, want to make that easy. But that's where we're at right now. I'll bring more updates as we continue to develop the program. So I think the next update for this group will be that major topics and needs document that the consultant will be putting together that'll outline, we need to really be thinking about this, and this as we're developing the program. So looking to have that in August or September.
Chris, do you know how far back you would be able to go to count projects? I mean, so we're doing projects currently that are VMT reducing projects that we're funding that could potentially be in a bank, but I mean, is there that's a legal question probably, but
I think it is, and, you know, as part of the pilot. That's something we'll need to work out on the legal side. I think it would be a good idea to take some projects that have already been implemented that could be on that list, right? Because the costs are.
we know,
Costs are known,
right, yeah,
right?
right, exactly.
So, yeah, I'll bring that up with the consultant and get that on our list of things to check in with the legal on.
Okay.
You know, the final program, they'll need to be projects that will be able to implement to offset the impacts, right? But, yeah, looking back at some of those knowns, I think would be smart going in.
Then we have a lot of other projects that are like getting queued up to move forward, to put bike lanes in, and I'd love to get credit for those.
Yeah.
In the bank for someone to use.
Yeah, that's the idea, right?
Right,
You
yeah.
know, fund good projects that will reduce VMT and also provide a way for good projects that have VMT impacts to offset those somehow. So right now, it's kind of a one-off decision at the local level on how that's mitigated, right? So hopefully this will provide a mechanism to make that a little easier.
Thanks.
Are there other counties that have implemented the mitigation bank? Yet, or
There are local jurisdictions that have done banks or exchanges, but not a county level one yet. Caltrans is also kind of in the water and looking at a potential state level system, but I'm not expecting anything to be online anytime soon. So they're thinking about it and it's being discussed, but nothing's happened yet. There's been a little push to have MTC maybe thinking about something at the regional level, but they're not super interested in taking that on right now. They're providing some support, people support and funding to help local county level programs kind of start to develop, but yeah, so I think it'll be up to us, or, you know, the recommendation may be, you know, here's an option for a county level program, or here's a way it can be implemented at the local jurisdiction level as well. So I think there may be a few different options that'll be looked at.
So just that last statement, the consultant will look at, will have options that that aren't aside from implemented all at the county level, local jurisdiction level.
It could, yeah. So we don't know yet, but I would expect there may be, you know, it may not be the county level implementation that would work best, right? There could be different options that are explored and recommended. So I think that'll be a great thing for the TAC to kind of discuss, right? There may not, you know, implementing something at the local level, there may not be resources, even if it seems like administratively that may work. There may not be an
Yeah, you might not
appetite
be
to do
getting
that.
enough to, there's a lot of, I mean, this has the parallel in stormwater, right? Stormwater world where it has been talked about for years that we should have an offset program. Or it says we have an offset program, yeah, somebody just needs to do it. And it stalled, and I mean, I think part of it was their appetite to bring to, you know, besides the technical part, was their appetite to bring to the policymakers that you're going to choose to implement a fee for developers, or it's gonna pay for something outside your jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And
it's gonna be the issue.
that's gonna be the issue, and I see it here, and, you know, to be.
Yeah.
So if there's, but yeah, it's hard to do it in a local jurisdiction level too, right? So, you know, I get $15,000, what am I gonna do with $15,000 in my jurisdiction? Might as well give it to, you know, somebody else, so.
It's a definite trade-off, and I'll make sure that shows up in that, you know, that list of topics that needs to be considered, you know, geographic, you know, how that plays out, and, you know, the level it's administered at is definitely something to be worked through early on too. So I'll make sure that shows up as an item to be researched and discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would show up even if you didn't.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna go up.
Yeah.
You guys will acknowledge it right away.
Yeah.
my past career, I administered a regional traffic impact fee program for all of San Joaquin County, and they split up the fee that the jurisdiction kept 50% of the fee, they paid 40% to the county and 10% to SJCOG, and then there's a list of projects for basically all the jurisdictions that they could use the fees on. So maybe something like that could work.
All right, but his option.
All right, so if anyone wants to be on that committee, send Chris an email.
Yep.
All right, we moving on? Nothing else? All right, item number 7, Sonoma County Comprehensive Transportation Plan update.
That's me too. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So here's a preview for the schedule. I'll get to that in a minute. The blue line talks about all the projects, so we'll definitely be talking about that. But yeah, just wanted to touch base with everyone. We're actually kicking off our comprehensive transportation plan update. So I believe a lot of you have been, seen us update this in the past. So today I'm going to be talking about what the comprehensive transportation plan is. Why do we put this together? Talk about why we're updating it now, talking what we'll be focusing on as part of this update, and then looking at the schedule, including the call for projects. And we've been talking to David and Shauna about the how that intersects with the funding as well. So there are 2 pieces to the CTP. One really looks at the long-term vision for Sonoma County with a focus on transportation. As part of the CTP, we develop a vision and goals. So I've summarized those in the staff report and here in the presentation, but we want to, we're working on improving things here in Sonoma County. And so we want to have a roadmap set to get there. The CTP also serves as a reference document. So we gather a lot of information on current transportation trends, demographics, and statistics. Included in that is a look at where we'll be in the future as well. So look at growth forecasts on the employment and housing side and how that could impact future transportation as well. But another piece of the CTP, the second major reason we do this is it serves as a guiding document for transportation funding and long-term planning. So as part of the project evaluation criteria for the funding program, most of those criteria are coming from the CTP goals and objectives. So the CTP also feeds into the regional transportation plan that opens up funding for large projects. So generally, these projects should first start in the CTP and then trickle up to that regional transportation plan. And we're also required to have an updated policy and planning document to guide our transportation programming and funding. So those are state requirements and regional requirements, and funding eligibility is at risk if we don't meet that. So we update this every 4 or 5 years. The first CTP was adopted back in 2001. Our last update was 2021. We'd really like to build on what we've learned over the last few CTPs. We don't want to, rebuild what we've built before and try and go into different directions as part of this CTP update. So we're updating it now because things have changed quite a bit since 2021. When we kicked that off, it was before the pandemic. So we actually finished developing the last CTP during the pandemic. So a lot of our outreach was virtual and we learned a lot on how to do that during that process. So we feel like we may be able to reach some different people by using what we learned there. And travel behaviors changed quite a bit, right? People are working from home more, transit usage is changing. Our growth rate here in Sonoma County is quite a bit different than it was 10 years ago. So our growth is much flatter than it was in the past. So we want to consider that as we update the plan. One other thing we want to do is report on progress we're making on those visions and goals. So one of the first things we'll be doing is looking at different measurable metrics and looking at how we've done over the past 5 years and seeing if we're going in the right direction or need to kind of redouble our efforts in certain areas. So the transportation funding picture is also evolving. So Go Sonoma will be coming online very soon. So we want to make sure we're considering that and teeing everything up for that process. One new thing we'll be doing as part of this plan update is developing a near-term implementation plan really focused on the next 10 years. So looking at funding that'll be available and projects that are ready to go in that shorter term timeframe. So that's a new requirement from MPC. So we'll be working really closely with David on that. MPC is in the middle of a regional transportation plan update right now. They're calling it Plan Area 2050 Plus. That'll be wrapping up sometime next year, and they'll be kicking off the next plan update in 2026. So they want county level CTPs to be feeding into that by the end of next year. So we have 18 months or so to get this done to feed into the next RTP. So they're telling us that'll be a major update, and it will include the regional housing needs assessment, which all the planners are really familiar with, but it has pretty big impacts across the region and the state. So we expect the next plan update to be pretty significant. So we want to make sure we have projects and policies and information that will feed into that major update that are really reflective of what's important in Sonoma County. And there are a ton of other recent and current planning activities going on right now. We have our active transportation plan. We're going to be kicking off community-based transportation plans. There are general plan updates going on. So there's a lot of other work going on that we want to consider as we're going into this CTP update. These are the types of things we're going to be focusing on, refreshing our outreach. So one of the things we want to do here is really look at outreach that's happened as part of these other planning efforts and identifying major trends and topics that keep popping up. One thing we hear over and over as we're out talking to people is, they've already provided some feedback, right? So we want to make sure that they know they're being heard and we're considering what they've said before. I mentioned before, we're going to be providing a progress report on how we're doing, looking at congestion, BMT, greenhouse gas emissions, things like that. We'll update our performance analysis. So this is where we look at the future and see what our trajectory is and how our actions in the plan and project may impact where we're going in the future. We'll update those reference sections. So we have a lot of new data we can include in there that can be useful for other planning and engineering efforts. We'll update the project list. So we do this as part of every CTP update. One thing I want to mention about the CTP project list is it's financially unconstrained. So this is an opportunity to look at projects, good projects that are large, that would benefit the county, that you would like to see continue to develop. And, there's not a financial constraint like there is in the regional plan or other plans like that. And then one new thing I mentioned is mapping out short-term implementation. So working with David and his team on, what we can do over the next 10 years. So the planning horizon for our CTP is generally 25 or 30 years. So looking pretty far out into the future, but we want to really focus on the near-term actions we can take as well.
And is that different from previous years doing the 10-year outlook? Breaking that out from the rest of the projects?
Yeah, so we'll basically take the full CTP project list. I've been talking to David a little bit about this. We'll definitely look at the next Sonoma funding program, call for projects as well, and kind of link those up more than they've been in the past. So work more closely together on that. Part of that short-term implementation, it'll include projects, but also programs and policies as well. So it'll build on those short-term projects and funding. And, maybe we identify TDM programs, free fare transit, things like that could be policies that may show up in that shorter-term implementation. So just touching on the outreach briefly, as I said before, we want to summarize common themes and make that a focus of our outreach. We've heard people are concerned with safety or congestion or, traffic around schools, right? There's certain things we hear over and over and over again. So we want to make sure to include that and reflect that as we're talking to people. And the CTP is it's a pretty high level document, right? It's looking at transportation at the county level. So we'll focus our outreach on looking at those types of issues. But I'm sure we'll hear a lot about local issues as well. So we want to try and reach new people as well. We're planning on producing some short form videos that we can push out there that may reach some new audiences. One thing we've been doing as part of the active transportation plan is pop-up outreach. So basically tabling at farmers markets and other events that are already happening. So going out to where people are, not asking them to come to our workshops. The attendance may be pretty low, so going where there's good foot traffic.
I'm just curious, are there target groups out there that you are thinking about that you've not reached before? You're trying to reach new and sort of, but what's your thinking?
Not yet. So we're still developing our outreach plan. So certainly, the people we generally reach are, older people that have more time and an interest in transportation specifically. So we have a hard time reaching younger folks in Sonoma County, families, people that are busy. So, I would say, at least at this stage, those are a few of the groups we like to try and reach. Yeah. We did a little bit of outreach on social media for the last CTP, and we'll have an online survey as well that we'll point people towards. So, and then we'll engage in some traditional outreach as well, having a few workshops, going to community meetings and focus groups as well. So this is our current CTP vision and goals. So I'm not going to go through each of these, but you can see they're very broad, kind of high level goals, like making our transportation system connected and reliable and safe and well maintained. So there's a little bit of narrative attached to each of those goals on what they mean, but it's broad, kind of broad issues that we want to work on. One thing we have done is identify performance measures that we can use to measure progress in these different areas. So I apologize, this is pretty small, but you can see here, this chart shows the 4 CTP goals and different quantifiable metrics that we've used in the past to measure progress. So for example, looking at travel efficiency, we've looked at person hours of delay, travel times, things like that. Looking at equity in the environment, we've looked at average household travel costs, VMT per capita, things like that. So if you have any ideas here on how to measure progress, please let me know. This will be kind of where we start from, and then we may add additional metrics as we move along. All right, so here's a look at the update schedule, where in summer of 2024 here, there are 5 different tracks that we're going to be working on. One is the public outreach. So we'll be kicking off this summer. So right now we're drafting our outreach plan. So one of the first things we'll do is developing an online survey. We'll kind of chart out where we want to be out in the community. We'll have some public workshops next spring and summer, and then roll out the final plan next fall and winter. Looking at our vision and goals, we'll have that progress report sometime this fall, and update metrics as necessary as new data and information is available. We'll update our data and technical analysis starting this summer. Adam's already been working on some of this for our travel model. So we use our travel model and other tools to evaluate how things look in the future. We'll do the performance assessment, which is using the travel model and tools to look at the performance of the projects and policies. And so we'll be working on that next spring and summer. So talking about the project list, we're looking at having a CTP call for projects this fall. And so what we'll do here is we'll send a list of existing projects in the CTP to each jurisdiction. So a lot of you are familiar with this. So to review and update the information, and then we'll also solicit new projects as well as part of this. So as we develop the process for this, I'll bring information back, and so expect something in the fall with information on the application and the way we'll be doing that. So I know for the last CTP, there was an online form that you could use to fill out, so we'll likely do something like that again, as long as it wasn't too onerous. So let me know if you have any recommendations for how to interact with the call for projects. And so then, as David mentioned, the SCTA funding program cycle 2 call for projects will be happening next summer. So we hope that that builds on that financially unconstrained list of projects that's developed for the CTP. And then we'll use the funding program cycle 2 call and, you know, policies and program information to develop that 10-year implementation plan by the end of next year. So looking at producing the draft final CTP, we hope to have a draft ready sometime next fall, and then the final CTP incorporating any comments by the end of 2025. So a pretty quick turnaround. So I would say we're a pretty small staff, so we're going to be doing most of the work internally at the staff level with potentially some support for public outreach. So based on that, we do need to be pretty efficient in what we're doing. So we won't be able to, you know, do everything maybe that we'd like to do, but, you know, I think the benefit on building on what we've done in the past and previous CDPs is we can keep building that up over time. So with that, that's where we're at right now. So more to come soon. So I think the next major item will be the call for projects this fall.
And I wasn't involved in the last update. Is there any local action required to submit projects through the call for projects? Is this something that we are required to take to our city council, or maybe that you advise taking to our city councils?
I don't believe there's a requirement. For the funding program, I think there's definitely council action recommended for that.
I think that was an issue with the code last time for the funding program.
Gotcha.
What was submitted did go to council.
Gotcha. Okay.
I would certainly recommend that you at least touch base with the SCTA rep on any projects that are changing or going in. But at this point, I don't think there'll be any formal council action will be required for the CDP.
Okay.
Always a good idea.
Yeah, I'm thinking it'd probably be best to do it anyways.
Any other questions? Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, maybe
Yeah,
I could
please.
just open things up very briefly. I know
course.
a number of you have participated in the call for projects in the past. I'd be interested in hearing just if there were any good or bad experiences in previous calls that
I
they
don't remember it, so it couldn't have been that bad.
Okay.
I thought the submitting online was actually clunky,
It was clunky, okay.
and it just, yeah. And maybe just be the software.
Yeah, it was a Google form last time that fed into a spreadsheet, so I'll take a look at what we did before and, you know, try and streamline.
Yeah,
that,
I think
or just
anybody
do-
can sit longer than just the deliberating.
Just updating a spreadsheet, right? Like, that's been
Yeah.
done in the past as well, so. Good to know. We'll do some testing on that too.
And were the same policy considerations in place for the last update in 2021? That the kind of the Go Sonoma framework was in play. And are there any changes since then that you would anticipate impacting which projects are better fit to the plan?
So the CTP is a pretty broad
Yeah.
net, right? So I think where it gets to evaluating good fit is when we look at the Go Sonoma phase 2. So the last scoring criteria were based on the CTP goals. So we're trying to get away with, you know, we feel like the goals right now are still pretty fresh. And so we're recommending to our board that we stick with those for now. So at least from the planning standpoint, I don't know if there'll be big changes, but maybe David, if you have any thoughts on how that.
Yeah, from a program perspective, I don't see a big need to change the scoring criteria from the last cycle, unless there's a lot of input from committees or our board. But I think, as Chris said, we haven't really had any big policy changes, so I think they'll probably stay pretty much similar to what they were. Okay. But as Chris mentioned, the CTP is paradigm thing essentially, so it's financial administrating pretty much everything in your journal plan circulation element.
Any other input? Anyone else remember 2021 inputting other than Edie?
So,
All right, with that, we'll move on. Item number 8, the Sonoma County Travel Behavior Study. Adam?
Yes, indeed. Let's get it launched up. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here, Adam Garcia, data analyst, to talk to you about our travel behavior study addendum update for 2017 to 2022. So as you may know, we did release our first travel behavior study back in 2017 for that year. It actually came out in 2020, but it was for 2017. So this is an update giving us an interesting perspective through some very challenging years and trying to understand how travel has affected or how those impacts have affected travel. So for an overview, the travel behavior addendum is taking a daily snapshot in the springtime for 2017, 2019, and 2022 based off mobile data. So it's kind of looking at specifically in the simplified view, origins and destinations. Where did you start and where did you end? How far was that trip? What was the VMT of that trip? And then looking at also some morning and evening commute breakout times as well. So the results are broken out by the 9 jurisdictions, and then for the county that's broken up further into sub-county areas, and then also looking at travel outside of the county to about 40 different counties. Let's see, so some of the influences, as I mentioned, on travel behavior just during this time. As Chris mentioned, domestic population has either stagnated or is on a decline. And we also see declines in the foreign immigration rate as well. There were obviously a number of fires during that time that affected travel behavior: Nuns, Tubbs, Pocket, Kincaid, Walbridge, and Glass, the COVID-19 pandemic, and then cost of living. So all of these things have just kind of been hammers on us trying to figure out how do we keep our lives going? How do we change our ways of moving around? So to give a visualization, here are the different zones, the travel behavior zones. In order to make sure that as I failed to mention, the data that we get from mobile phone data is from Streetlight. So in order to make sure that that mobile phone data is accurate, we have a number of different traffic count locations to verify along the 101 and Highway 37 to make sure that what the mobile data is showing is close to or needs to be kind of ratcheted down or up to match what the actual real traffic counts are. So some of the main findings at a high level, daily intra-county trips, those are trips that stay within Sonoma County. That has stayed pretty consistent over the last several years at about 90% of our trips stay within the county. That's somewhat unique from my understanding. I don't have the stats of all the other counties, particularly in the Bay Area, but from anecdotes, we've heard that we have a very high rate. So a lot of the other counties have much higher inter-county travel, which is in between counties. So as you can see, there is quite a difference though that although only 10% of the trips are inter-county, that accounts for almost half of the total VMT and associated emissions. So those are much longer trips to get out of the county, takes a little while, so depending on where you are, so that is that tracks, but just to give context, yeah, most of our trips, 90%, also count for half of our VMT. In terms of the average trip length, that's stayed also mostly consistent. This is both for counting for intra and inter-county trips. But I think what's most notable is the average trip length within incorporated jurisdictions is about 2.6 miles. So that's individual trips, going to the grocery store, picking up kids, what have you. So what highlights for me in this particular case is that is a very strong case for trying to replace some of those trips with active mobility trips, particularly at that distance. You know, e-bike, electric trips, that makes those distances much easier to meet those daily needs. Let's see. Looking at the inter-county trips, this is again just a snapshot for 2022. It doesn't necessarily capture the changes that have happened, but we can see that our main county that we moved to is obviously Marin to the south, with nearly a third of our trips going there, followed by Napa, Solano, San Francisco, and then Mendocino. So just to give you a little context, there is the travel behavior actual report, which goes into a lot more depth about these changes. But to give you a sense where the changes were, Lake County between 2017 and 2022 added about 3.6 thousand trips. Mendocino was about 2.3 thousand trips, and Solano added 2.9 thousand trips. On the other side, San Francisco, we lost about 4.1 thousand trips. Napa was a reduction in 6.3 thousand trips, and for Marin, our trip count reduced at 13.5 thousand trips during that time. So we're going to go over a few of these travel behavior zone profiles for the jurisdictions and be able to look into each of these in a little more depth. But just to walk through you with Cloverdale, so on the left, and apologies, this is a little hard to see on the screen. But on the left side, we're looking at our VMT per capita, and then total population down below. There is the total number of trips, as well as then the trips within the city or within your travel zone, and then average trip length down below. Now on the right side, we're looking both at inter and intra-county trips, comparing the trips generated versus the VMT generated. So I think this is a good illustration. Most of the profiles show this, where the inter-county trips show us a shorter line, but the VMT on the other side is actually much more increased. So you can see that relationship between the inter-county trips and the VMT. Then the map up above gives you a sense of how many trips stay within that travel zone or within the jurisdiction, and then essentially the top 5 daily trips. So here we see significantly, most of the trips in Cloverdale stay within Cloverdale. And some trips are leaving the county as well, going up to Mendocino. Cotati is interesting and unique in that, given it's a smaller city surrounded by some bigger cities, it actually has fewer intra-city trips and more trips going out to Rona Park and Santa Rosa than just within Cotati. Healdsburg shows a very strong decline in VMT per capita, 64 VMT down to 55 VMT during that time. Looking at Petaluma, it also had a decrease in VMT per capita, though not quite as significant. And also shows quite a bit of travel given a similar border jurisdiction as Cloverdale, only to the south to Marin County is a good portion of its trips. Roner Park shows quite a few of its trips. The vast majority actually stay within the city for their top 5 daily zonal trips. And in Santa Rosa also showed a moderate decline in VMT per capita. Again, with the largest number of intracity trips, as you can imagine, being the most populous city. Sebastopol also showed a fair amount of sharing in terms of the trips between within the city to the unincorporated north. That's what the UI stands for. And then just slightly less to actually the same amount to Sonoma Mid as well. In Sonoma City also shows one of its main top destinations is outside of the county, going over to Napa. And finishing off with Windsor. It also has a very small inter-county trips, maybe some of the smallest numbers, but shows just a slight moderate level of inter-county VMT. Would pause there and just see if there's any questions, comments, thoughts, ideas about how to potentially use this report are also helpful. We'll be finalizing the data and the reports in the next probably week or so. So if you do have a chance to review it and give any comments back, we'd appreciate it. We've presented at the PAC and the CAC. So wrapping it up with you all and hoping, yeah, if there's anything interesting you point out or anything to change, fix, we'd be happy to get that started.
Let's see if I'm interpreting this right. So the lower VMT is attributed to things like working at home more.
It could be.
It could be people using transit more. If that, but can you pinpoint what's causing it, or you're looking at the results?
We're looking at the results, so we have to basically speculate. It's work from home. It might be the land use patterns, what was built during that time. What was, depending on what type of trips those new developments generated, that would probably be a good indicator. But yeah, unfortunately, we can't necessarily get into the details, but that's part of what we'd love to hear back. If you have any thoughts of, hey, we think this might be a contributing factor, or this seems like an anomaly, can you look into that? We'd be, happy to check that out either way.
I had the same question because I could see council reading this and saying, oh, we're doing such a great job. We're dropping our VMT per capita because
Policies are working.
yeah. So it would be nice to understand that better, but I understand that that's not what you have.
Yeah.
I think with more data in the future, we'll see the trend than just small analysis.
2 years does not a trend make.
Yeah, there was a lot of interest on the CAC about pushing this forward into the future, looking at breaking down by visitors as well. That was a theme that came out, wanting to know who, particularly kind of given we're a tourist-based county, among other things. So just trying to understand, what can we get any more details, I think is kind of what we were hearing some feedback also. Just so if there's any suggestions, we'd love to hear them in terms of how to get better. I'm gonna jump up to Steve and then come back to the room. Steve, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Adam. Can you show the county's page again, please?
Yeah, which one was that?
Sonoma County?
Is there one for the county?
We don't have one for the county. This is, there, we have the countywide results.
Okay, so you don't have necessarily trip demands for the Guerneville area or the Springs area, or any of those little countywide suburbs, Grayton.
The pockets that we do are on the map here. So we have the Alexander Valley Winery Zone, Santa Rosa Airport, the Grayton Casino, Sonoma Valley, Sonoma Sky Park, Winery Zone, Arnold Drive, Sears Point, and then, yeah, just kind of larger areas of the unincorporated county.
Now, as much as I enjoy our friends from Santa Rosa, I think the county would like to take credit for managing and operating the airport as much as we've been in the paper these days. So it's a Sonoma County airport.
I will make that correction. Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to see, something from, the Grayton, Guerneville area, the Springs area, obviously. Those are locations, and I'm glad you have the airport area as well, because that's a significant traffic generator for us, as well as the Wickiup, Larkfield areas. I think are locations that probably we would want to understand what's going on there.
Yeah, and just to add that there are those individual profile zones broken out in the actual report for each of these county unincorporated zones as well.
Well, you know us, we like to see pretty pictures, graphs and stuff like that too, so we want our fair share.
And Adam, just to clarify on the mapping here, you're showing the actual traffic analysis zones, is that correct?
Yeah, these are the actual traffic analysis zones.
So
Or no, sorry, not sorry, those are not the TAZs. These are the travel behavior zone systems. The TAZ areas are much more refined.
So at that level, you would be able to break out, say, current.
Correct.
But not this level.
Yes.
Thanks, Adam.
Yep.
A similar question related is how were those zones selected? Why were those pockets chosen?
I will tip that to
Yeah.
Chris.
So for the original travel behavior study back in, we kicked it off in 2018, I believe, 2019. We started with our travel model zones, and that original report had much more detail. So I know we did for that original report that was released in a number of years ago, that's on our website. We do have information specifically for Guerneville and some of those other areas. We have multiple zones within the jurisdictions too. So Santa Rosa has maybe 10. So there's a lot more detail in that original report, but we had a smaller budget to do the refresh. So we worked with the consultant to identify bigger areas. We wanted at least one area per jurisdiction, and then looked at a few other major unincorporated areas as well. So this is kind of a roll up from that original set of zones. And we worked with, I remember we had a map, online map back when we were doing this before, when we solicited feedback from the TAC and the PAC on those zones. We made some changes. That was a collaborative effort to identify those original ones. And then, yeah, this is basically rolling up from there because we didn't have enough budget to include that level of detail this time around. So when we do this in the future, if we have more resources, it'd be great to look at the more detailed areas again, because we were able to look at, looking at Healdsburg, we were able to look at downtown versus the rest of Healdsburg. In Santa Rosa, we had one for the JC area. Santa Rosa Avenue Marketplace was this individual zone. One of the most productive zones in the county was in Rohnert Park on the west side, the shopping area over there. So there's a lot of detail in that original report. That using this information, you can kind of look at those original detailed results, look at how things have changed, and make some inferences of the direction things are going. So, sorry, I covered more than just how the zones were generated, but it was a collaborative effort originally, and this is less detail.
Yeah,
based
based
on
on
this.
specific, yes, for west side. Yeah, we don't understand it.
I think relating to people traveling to the county and visiting the county and the whole Bodega Bay area, because we know from the park standpoint, that's our like highest visitation area. It's all the connection to the coast for many people traveling from out of county, getting to Bodega Bay.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The thought I had, and I don't know if it was covered in the original report, is are there paths through troops saying going from Mendocino to Marin that are affecting us VMT wise? I'm not sure if that was in the original.
Yeah, that's definitely broken out in the original report. We also, the consultant Farron Pierce was our consultant on this project too. They were able to look at visitor travelers as well. So they were able to get the home location for the devices and come up with percentages of how much visitor travel was coming from outside of the county. And one thing that we found is most of the visitors coming to Sonoma County were coming from like 100 miles away. So a lot of it wasn't national and international visitor travel. A lot of it was more local visitor travel. So I would say that could include people that are including Sonoma County as part of a larger trip in the Bay Area. They may be basing out of San Francisco or Napa and then spending a day or two in Sonoma. So, but yeah, there's a section of the report that covers visitors too.
Not seeing any other questions. Thank you, Adam. Item 9, the SCTA RCPA upcoming meeting for July 8th. Anything to discuss there?
So for the board meeting on July 8th, there will be under consent of legislative update, the 2024 community-based transportation plan program contract, and update to the membership for the transit integration ad hoc. For the regular calendar, the board will be presented with transit-oriented communities policy, the final 2023 strategic implementation plan that you all saw today. The RCPA's greenhouse gas inventory, the 2022 update, travel behavior study, 2022 addendum that I believe Adam just spoke on, and then the Sonoma County Transportation Comprehensive Plan update. And then our regular reports and announcements as usual.
Great, thank you. No one has any questions? On to item 10, roundtable discussion. Anyone have anything to share? Yes.
Well, I don't know the share, but I have a question, yes, for the group. The OBAG 4 funding, I'm wondering, we've had a lot of interest and not pushback, but concern from our planning department on the OBAG 4 and what's required to get that ready for spring of 2026. And I'm just wondering if other jurisdictions are experiencing the same thing.
Yes, I think we all are. I think we're kind of all having the same inability to meet some of the requirements of the TOC. And without that, we don't know exactly what the requirement for OBAG 4 is going to be. Did I say that correctly?
That's what I'm hearing.
And I mean, from Healdsburg perspective, I assume it's going to be similar to a lot of people. We're just not going to be able to meet some of those requirements. It's changing a lot of housing stuff that I don't claim to necessarily understand.
Yeah, I
But,
don't either.
a lot of ordinance changes that are unlikely to be approved or even wanted. So I don't know how that's all going to play out. I keep hoping that SCTA, MTC, others are going to say, wait a minute, this is going to be unfair to certain jurisdictions or certain large areas of the state. And that maybe that there can be some kind of carve out or change. Anyone else have anything? Good news, grants, retirements?
The county was invited to submit the Prairie Conservation Area grant, a full grant for Sonoma Shell Hill Trail. That's design and environmental review. If others are also going to be submitting, I talked with Ben Botkin yesterday, who heads the program. He said, even though it says in the application form, it's optional for letters of support, it's preferred. And so the more it's a partnership project, more favorable they'll look upon your application.
I believe Santa Rosa was also invited to the Southeast Greenway for the escape program.
I wasn't in that one.
We were also for an Adobe Creek Trail project.
Speaking of grants, we've been working closely with the town of Windsor, city of Santa Rosa, city of Cotati, city of Warner Park, city of Petaluma, on CPC Roads for All. Margo Cañas from our staff has been coordinating that, so we're planning to submit that in August. Also, another reminder, I mentioned it the last couple of meetings, but the CPC is adopting the final guidance for cycle 2 of the local transportation climate adaptation program today. That funding, I believe, their applications are due in August, and it's really about climate adaptation and evacuation routes, and there's 94 million of federal funds available. There hasn't been a lot of interest yet on that, I believe, but MTC was successful with getting 50 million for Highway 37 from that program last cycle, so it's definitely something that's really good to look at if any of you have projects that come into the next couple of years that would fit that funding. Or that, the next round of SB1 funding will be coming out with calls for projects this summer as well. So if any of you are looking at the local partnership competitive program, that's a good funding source that Windsor and a few other jurisdictions have been successful for the last few years.
Anything else? It takes time to put this hammer here, so. It won't be someday that we just get so raucous that I need to get control of the